Welcome back to A Fine Time for Healing, a place where your physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being are all that matter. So put your feet up, relax, and enjoy today's show. Today we have with us Dr. Michiyo Ambrosius, who is a clinical psychologist and transformational leader and coach. She has dedicated more than 20 years helping individuals with a focus on mental health and trauma treatment. Her newest technique, which you all may be familiar with because I've talked about this, Neuro Bi-Lateral Processing, NBP, is highly effective for trauma healing by resolving painful memories through integrating the different parts of the brain. This technique is freeing people efficiently from their trauma on a cellular level. Dr. Michiyo passionately believes that we can follow our inner path to pursue our unique potential and life purpose. She is deeply committed to helping her clients achieve psychological and emotional growth. And there's so much more to Dr. Michiyo, which she's going to tell us. So welcome, Dr. Michiyo. It's so great to have you with us today.
Well, thank you, Randi, for having me. I'm delighted to speak with you today.
Yes, it's great to have you. I think it would be great. I think it would be important to sort of start with a little bit of your background and what your childhood was and what motivated you to become a psychotherapist.
Well, I didn't realize it for a long time, but eventually I realized that I developed empathy toward the people who are experiencing depression and anxiety and coming from their early life experiences of trauma. And trauma includes, abuse of any kind or loss of any kind. Um, that is the cause of oftentimes long after the experiences, negative experiences, uh, the symptoms, real symptoms, recognizable symptoms show up, and in the form of severe anxiety and depression. And at the time, I decided to take the psychology courses. I didn't realize that I had a mother who was abusive and narcissistic. And when I started master's degree coursework, there was university psychologist who I met with in a weekly basis with a recommendation of the professor who told us to see a psychotherapist at school because that would be a great personal experiences for us to be trained eventually as become a psychotherapist. So I have decided to attend the weekly sessions with him, and he was from Hawaii, um, Sansei, the third generation Japanese American. And hearing about my relationship with my mother and some of the actions that took place between the two of us, he said, "Oh, you must be very angry towards your mother." And at the time, I didn't really respond because I was hesitant to say anything. But when I came home, I said to my husband, my therapist told me that I must be angry toward my mother. And how crazy think he's saying. I was completely denial. And those are often the case with, a lot of people who had experienced traumatic um, difficulties. And so gradually, was beginning to build empathy toward the people who I have been seeing as an intern and student at the training centers. And oh my gosh, this is such worthwhile work. And I thought this is something I need to do because I felt so much empathy toward them. And um, even recently, actually, during our trip to Panama Canal, we just came home a few days ago. But I was thinking of, prior to that, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't take a vacation for 6 years. And so we, decided quick sign up to go on this trip.
Mhm.
But when I started to read your book, because I didn't finish it previous to the trip, I another time of eye opening, and I said, "Oh my, I cannot retire."
No, this is so important. Oh my gosh.
There are so many people who are, suffering, and yet they are in denial, and
Yes,
these people need to be helped. And
they really
so,
do.
yes, your book rethought my retiring idea.
Oh my gosh. And when you brought up that anger thing, it's one question that I ask people generally when they first start to see me. Um, and I know they're not going to be angry. And they go, "No, not really. Why do you ask?" And I said, "Because is anger shows me that you have developed self-love and boundaries, because until then, you're not going to get angry until you really feel violated. But in the beginning, you really don't feel violated because you don't understand your part in it. You don't understand what has happened to you. So that's a very, very big question is, are you angry about this? And at some point, that is a healthy response, right?
That's right. That's right.
Exactly.
Yes. And finally realize that personal space, personal mental and emotional elements in us, which is the soul part of ourselves, had been really violated and hurt and wounded until we feel anger toward the perpetrators. We won't be healing our wounding, and
And
we don't.
anger, right? And anger doesn't mean that you're going to go out and shoot up a building. Anger just means it's not that you have to display it, it's just that you
Mhm.
feel it, right?
Oh yeah, right, right. And yes, hurt.
Hurt.
What is surfacing of the hurt is the anger. And when you start to feel anger, you got to recognize that you have been hurt and wounded and abused and um, made to experience such degree of pain.
Yes. It's very deep pain. So you were born in Tokyo, Japan, and raised by a Roman Catholic grandmother and father and a Shinto mother in a predominantly Buddhist culture and Zen philosophy. So you bring a lot of different philosophies into your work, right?
Yes, yes,
Cultures,
that is
cultures.
very helpful.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
aside from regular white Americans, so to speak, um, I see a lot of people from Asian countries and Middle Eastern countries, and especially women of these uh, Asian and Middle Eastern countries had been really hurt and oppressed and controlled by narcissistic males and parents
Hmm.
because the culture tells their parents that they have a right to own their children. And therefore, they'll, try to raise the submissive um, people and polite, kind, and good people is their intention, they say, but with narcissistic treatment of them to make them submissive and controllable.
Yes. And I've actually seen that. I find it's very complicated to work with clients who are from these cultures because their culture is approving of this kind of behavior, and it's very hard for them to rise up out of this and be
Mhm.
different because then they lose the support of their culture, their family,
Mhm.
everything. So it's a huge risk to heal from this, right?
Right, right. And such emphasis is given to us, mm, both male and female offsprings of the parents, learn to obey. Emphasis is to obey and respect our parents and elders, and culture train you to be susceptible for getting narcissistic, abusive treatments, and
You
not
find,
to
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
object,
right. Do you
not to
find that
object.
they have to remove themselves from the culture in order to heal? Or come to
Yes,
the United States and be away into a different kind of culture setting for them to be able to
I
heal
think
this?
so. I think so.
Mm.
Yes. Although nowadays, in Japan, I see in Japan and different part of the world, there are psychotherapists, but they are, very much affected people and steeped in their culture, who tell you to be submissive, tell you to be, gentle and not fight back. Um, so I I think that they do need to be removing themselves from the culture, because culture itself is abusive culture, especially toward um, women and people who are in lower, social strata.
People from these cultures that they realize it when they're within the culture, or it isn't until they maybe come to the United States or a more liberal kind of culture, a more
Mhm.
self-oriented kind of culture, that's really when they wake up to it. Because when they're immersed in that culture, they may not be able to see it. They know they don't feel right, but they don't understand why, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the reason why I left Japan and, saved money and worked after school hours and decided to leave Japan, that was not reason. That was not the reason to leave Japan from my parents and abusive mother. I thought, I could actualize myself more in countries where freedom of freedom is valued, democratic thinking and attitudes are valued, and I wanted to see how I can cultivate my ability and capacity in myself to grow and be educated. And mm, so I at the beginning, I even had the intention of going back to Japan
Oh,
after
wow.
1 year, but I went back to Japan after 1 year. No, actually, after 3 years, I stayed on. Than actual first plan of staying here for 1 year. Stayed on 3 years and went back to Japan. And I said, "Oh my God, I cannot live here."
No. That took a lot of courage for you to come to a completely different culture. Did you know the language? Did you know how to speak English when you came here?
Not very much, very little actually. And in a way, that was yeah, another difficulty that I had experienced because I never felt, and I still don't feel that I speak English fluently and effortlessly. Um, Therefore, I don't feel quite confident when I do the speaking engagements and
Great.
um, mhm.
Well, you do very well, but
Oh, thank you.
yeah, you do very well. It's,
Still
I
accent
just
there
can't,
and certain words don't come up, readily,
right.
and
It's
I
difficult.
still feel difficult.
Right.
And I felt that was, I felt that was a punishment for leaving our parents for a long time.
I could see why you would, because we all always go back to ourselves and we blame, we're the first person we blame. This is happening
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
I did something bad, and that
Uh-huh.
guilt and shame is so deep within us. It's very,
Very
very hard
much.
to
Yes,
get rid of that. So you you created this neuro bilateral processing, which of course I'm very familiar with because I was in your pilot training program. And
mhm,
I know that you have a 99% success rate with doing
mhm.
this. So tell us about the NBP, what your what caused you to create this? What were thinking when you developed this? I think that would be a good place to start because I know you had a very specific reason for developing this.
That's correct. And more well-known trauma healing technique is called EMDR, uh, eye movement, desensitization processing, EMDR. And I have taken, that course as a continuing education courses, and so I have learned to apply that technique, and I have been doing that for several years already. And I have noticed this technique require the clients or the patients to lengthy description of how their trauma experiences or painful experiences perpetrated by other people, um, lengthy description was required
Mm.
while the application of the eye movement technique was applied. And and 2 or 3 times, um, and one of them especially, I remember when I started to use this EMDR technique on her, because she was insisted by her brother, elder brother, at knife point. And when I asked her to describe, and she started, but she screamed and ran out of my office. And I said, "Oh, this is not good. She is re-experiencing um, the scene of trauma that
Right.
she experienced,
Mhm.
and this is no good." And a few other cases, I have experienced people who were having very much of a difficulty describing what happened. So I said, aren't there any other way to, eliminate the necessity to describe their experiences? So that's the reason why I decided to use breath control to reduce their consciousness level before the start of the healing session. And that's how I learned by doing some yoga and, uh, this kind of thing, and will reduce the awareness and a little bit have you little bit of experience the hyperventilation and also sleepiness, so that if they are asked to choose a scene of a difficulty, they can at least just a moment of um, description
Okay.
can be given
Mhm.
and prepare that, and then ask them to um, describe the scene of the trauma in just several words. Just say to me where and what's happening and who you're with, and just say it in several words only, and put that into a snapshot picture. So that's the reason. And then I have them, little breathing again to have that snapshot picture to erase, right? And that is really, really empowering, that they are actually able to erase that snapshot picture. And that's the core of um, the difficult, abusive, traumatic experiences. And for them to be able to erase that snapshot picture is a huge, huge um, healing healing process,
Right.
because i- flash people re-experiences these traumatic experiences in the forms of flashbacks, right? And a flashback is like just one picture, one flash of picture. So snapshot picture um, is something that I thought I should have them bring up and erase it and let it go. And so that worked very well. And then I have them bring up fun, loving, beautiful experiences that they have had um, in different occasions.
Right.
So that
Right.
will be the good impression of their life experiences can be brought back into their lives.
Okay. And that's beautiful. When you first started realizing this, that you could sort of reduce the impact of the flashback, were
Mhm.
you combining this with EMDR at first? Did you sort of bring that into EMDR, or did you just completely change the way you were doing this work?
I have, well, because of my experiences of um, applying EMDR techniques, and I saw this negative effects happening to my clients, and then I decided to completely change. Although the some of the processes later on that I utilized, like bringing them up with a happy, beautiful occasions that they experienced. That is the some of the EMDR techniques being included,
Okay.
and that portion I kept
Mhm.
because it is a good healing processes.
Right. Now, do you find, so neurobilateral processing, let's just briefly talk about why you call it neurobilateral processing.
Mhm, mhm. Well, bilateral and also the EMDR, eye movement, back and forth, left and right side movements, or tapping of left and right side of the body portions of us. um, I realized that that is the way, the technique to um, stimulate both sides of our brain system. And as most people know, the right side is connected to left brain, that is executive functioning, coping mechanisms, and rational thinking abilities. And then the left side of the body and that nervous system is connected to right side of the brain, that is have a function of contributing to emotional experiences. And I have, realized that the both side of the brain need to be stimulated in order to um, utilize stuck memory in the right side of the brain, needed to be moved back and forth between left and right side of the brain, because left side of the brain has a good coping mechanisms and rational thinking and logical way of thinking. And stuck memory is usually in the right side of the brain, because emotional responses um, concretized with abusive or painful experiences.
Right, right. So I think what frustrates people that aren't aware that there are these methods is that they get very upset that they cannot think their way out of things. And so, I find that that is one of the things that holds people back the most is they're saying it to themselves and everyone else is saying it to themselves. Get over it already. This is
Mhm,
logical. Let's think this out
mhm,
and move
mhm,
past it, right?
mhm,
But this is
mhm.
not um, a cognitive function. It's not a blockage of the cognitive brain, right?
That's
So can
right.
you
That's
explain
right.
that? Can you explain that?
Well, typically traumatic memories, incidents are experienced by the emotional responses to that, experiences, right?
Mhm.
Trauma experiences. And usually, right side of the brain is activated to feel an emotional response to that. So, um, right side of the brain is more affected by the traumatic experiences than the left side of the brain. And just, it happened long time ago, and forget about it by now, and that is logical thinking, but it does not work, because the memory of the experiences um, largely not in the left side of the brain, and you
Right,
can't talk it out.
right.
So have to activate the right side of the brain, and back and forth memories, be
Mm,
back and forth between left and right side of the brain, so that logical thinking and coping abilities can be applied to mm, right side brain affected memories. And so that's why both side of the brain functioning need to be activated.
And this
by
is right. And this is
or
integration. So you're integrating both so
yes,
that then the memory, the traumatic memory can be released, right?
yes, yes,
Now, are we releasing the memory or are we just releasing the emotional charge of the memory?
both. But scientists say that memories never can be removed. But so in this case, when we say removed or it's more like resolving by cognitive functioning of the left side of the brain to this has happened and that was very painful experiences and someone affected me in such a painful ways and recognizing that um, is quite a healing
Mm.
um, activity.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
because sometimes we are made to think because we were bad and they were we are being punished and put down was occurred or criticisms have been applied to us, right? And many of us think that was caused by us originally.
Right. Of
And with
course.
a left side brain functioning being activated to look at the traumatic incident, they can recognize finally that was not caused by us.
That's a huge part of the healing is to understand that we didn't have anything to do with it.
Right. That's right.
So, you do other kinds of therapies in addition to the neurobilateral processing. What is that the largest part of your practice, or is that just one aspect of your practice?
Well, applying of trauma healing technique is one aspect of my psychotherapy practices. I was very fortunate to attend my doctorate degree courses at a school where they incorporated Carl Jung's method, and he typically included dreaming and artistic expressions or descriptions being written in the literature and also like exercising bodily functions and different part of our body need to be involved in healing processes. And so I was able to recognize all different types of um, healings can be applied by looking into our dreams, looking into the art forms that would influence us or um, attracted to look at. And so that can be a healing technique. And also doing some yoga, squeezing and expanding of our muscles can remove our lymphatic fluid and being flushed out in the form of ion expelling of um, toxic elements. So that's why that will prepared me to recognize how these images are coming to us or memory of certain literature or attracted to certain art forms can be a very, very good, healing elements.
Right. Carl Jung was so brilliant. There's so many aspects of psychology and the mind that he just brought to the forefront. So
Right,
I know
right.
one of the things that you do is depth psychology. What is depth psychology?
Well, depth psychology is deeply look into soul's functions and being expressed in the art form or physical movement form such as dancing and yogic movements. And so yeah, deeply look into soul functioning of ourselves, and that is called.
How do you so for those who are listening and don't really understand what the soul is versus the mind, and how would you describe the soul?
Well, yes, it's a mysterious function that each one of us have, fortunate enough to have. But some people repress that part of the functioning um, that we need to be utilizing to live fuller life because of the wounding. We are told not to cry, not to express, not to feel, and painful experiences in earlier life were suppressed, right? And um, so any feelings and five senses, and including six senses that are intuitive knowing, and yogic people identified it, at this point at the forehead,
Right, the third eye,
and
right? Mhm.
yes, they call it third eye,
Or the
being
sixth
able
chakra
to
or whatever. Yeah.
see, yes, see something invisible, but you can recognize some element or something. So it's the third eye ability to see something without use of the eyesight. And I think there is a little episode. Helen Keller was asked, of the five senses, what functioning do you consider most? Because she was born with three or four different um, functioning being, um, damaged. And so sh her parents were kind enough and clever enough and yeah, to hire someone to develop her to feel the touch and feel the anyway. So the sixth sense can be developed to um, so that she could, compromise or overcome other functional difficulties, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she thought the ability to visualize is the most important function,
Wow.
and that is the soul's functioning.
Right. So it's sort of
Among
it's our higher self. It's sort
right,
of our higher
right.
self. Right.
Mhm.
That's
It is.
not physical world bound. It's a higher level of
Right,
ourselves. Right.
right, right.
Yeah. I
Yes.
mean, that's that is the most amazing story ever. She's the most amazing person that's ever lived, because she was able to develop that without any of the other senses, which is just
Mhm.
very hard for us to imagine, but how brilliant that was. So
Right.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. I wanted to hear more.
I think in her case, she was not completely blind at a younger age. So she remembers certain sight experiences, um, and she was able to later on that severity of, ability to see became diminished, but she was able to um, come up with images that she still remembered in a limited capacity, but
Right.
nonetheless.
What a brilliant woman.
Yes.
So I know that you do guided meditation and sleep aid
Mhm.
meditation, and I know that so many people struggle with sleep disorders, insomnia. So how does your sleep aid meditation help people?
Wow, that's a interesting question. I didn't think about that.
That's okay if I don't want to stump you. So
Yes,
I just
yes.
know that you do this, and are you
Mhm.
finding that this is effective?
Yes, yes. And especially guiding people to people first quiet down the physical part of ourselves, and then with the suggesting visual descriptions of the scenery that you might see, or the passageway that you might have yourself walk in an imaginal field, um, is very, very calming, because those selected visual suggestions to see in their imagination are healing. And then also, I was told that although sometimes I have difficulty talking, but I was told that I have very healing sound voices,
Oh,
and
wow.
that combined with visual presentations to guide them to see or walk, um, and mm, listen to the music. In this particular music was
Mm.
purchased through someone who recorded healing music, particularly mm, played in a repetitious mode,
Okay.
and that will create sound effect waves to guide you to the healing and quieting and um, well, relaxed state of being. And that's why many people say, this recording put them into sleep within 20 seconds.
Wow.
Yes, many people say, I have never listened to the end of your
They're sleeping before. That's
for
amazing. And these are people that have chronic insomnia?
would be great.
Wow.
And perhaps, they could go to my website, and in the home, at the bottom of the home page, they could have the recording downloaded. And I ask, suggest to them to download into their cell phone, so that,
Right.
they could have it any time they want to
So we
utilize.
can all listen to that.
Mhm, mhm,
And your
mhm.
website is what is your
Dr.
website?
Michiyo Ambrosius .com.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's great. I'm glad that you offer that to everyone.
Yes, yes. So I'm glad to explain why it
Right.
works.
And you also do workshops and group sessions, and you offer something, you've recorded something called the Glass Ceiling Breaker webinar. And is that always accessible to us if we want it?
Yes, yes. When people visit my website, the recording is there, and
Okay.
it does not contain visual aspect of it. It's a vocal recording, and this is about how women should utilize and develop mm, their all abilities, and utilize their different part of their soul's abilities, and become a good leader, and break the glass ceiling, which is,
Okay.
times held mm, above female workers or executives level of people have a difficult time to break through that glass ceiling, which are usually created by male people.
And the glass ceiling is just not being able to reach their
Just
full potential. They're sort of,
right.
they're
Yeah,
stopped at
emotional,
a certain level.
ceiling. Right. Mm-hmm. Emotional ceiling.
And you also offer other workshops and group sessions. Are they on your website as well?
Yes. Such as raising our self-esteem, which is so, so important for people to acquire the ability to value themselves and make themselves feel happy with themselves, and they have the ability to create happy life. And because so many people are damaged by abusiveness that were applied to them by people surrounding us. And by the way, after um, reading about your estimate of how many people, percentage of people are narcissistic abusers, um, was quite eye-opening, because among the um, psychotherapists and psychologists, they go by their certain set mind, and they say, like only about 2% in each 10 category of personality disordered persons. But in the case of narcissistic people, they are much more than 2%.
Yes, there are. Yeah, there are.
Mhm.
And the thing is, there cannot be any hard statistics on NPD, because narcissists will never, ever admit that there's anything wrong with them. So they're never
No,
going to
that's
submit
right.
themselves to any kind of studies. And so
That's right.
the number is ridiculously small in my opinion. But
Yes. Besides, when they hear someone say contrary to what they believe, they, their rage come up, and huge amount of opposition was, applied to the people
yep.
who might suggest something else,
Hmm.
right,
Hmm.
than what they believe in.
Right.
So,
So yeah, I think a modest, and this is not scientifically based at all, but I do think a modest estimate is that 25% of the global population suffers from a
yeah.
disorder such as NPD. And of course, then you have the psychopathy and sociopathy and the borderline and the histrionic, but they're kind of all part of
Mhm.
that cluster B disorder. And um, it's so alarming, because if you realize that for every person that has a personality disorder, how many lives are destroyed around them, it's
Right.
truly mind-blowing that this
For
world is
sure.
so disrupted by these people.
That's right. Narcissistic people and borderline people, they really, really oppress people around them and affect, I don't know. If one narcissistic person exists, they'll be creating havoc all around them, right? And so large percentage of uh, population in the world are being affected by narcissistic people
Uh,
and um, borderline people. By the way, the more I read about narcissistic people, I'm getting blurred of the difference between narcissistic person and borderline people. Can you,
yes,
clarify? Yeah,
yes,
what's the
yes,
difference
I
between
can, I
narcissistic
can.
person
So a
and
narcissist, right. So a narcissistic person has no empathy, and any love or affection that they exhibit is all an act. They never actually feel those things. So, so you can sort of have a blanket understanding that if you've been with a narcissist, anything that they've told you about loving you or being committed to you is really just not even true. Borderlines are more confusing, because people with borderline personality disorder, they do have moments of being very affectionate and very needy and very wanting that. But then as soon as they receive it back, they pull away. So you're getting it, but then it's being taken from you just as fast as you're getting it. So that's confusing, because
Mhm,
you can look at these relationships and you can say, well, there's times where I really believe that this person cared about me, but no sooner do they care about you, they don't care about you. And so that's really confusing. And I know that the clients who have come to me after having romantic relationships with these people
mhm,
are
mhm.
far worse off than people who have had, narcissism. And there is borderline in my family too. And it's truly crazy making, because you don't know where this is coming from. You know,
Oh,
sometimes
yeah,
they're
right.
very devoted
Mhm.
to you, and then other times
Yeah.
you are the enemy. And it's like, what am I? It's
Mm,
very hard.
yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, right, right.
Mhm.
And sudden attack and
Yes.
rageful um, wrath comes upon you is really, really confusing. And
Right.
I remember my mother used to make all my, dresses for me, and she really treated me with, tenderness and kindness when I was sick and, weakened condition, not to be able to fight back.
Right.
But yeah, right. So that's
Exactly.
why my sister is still in denial, I guess.
It's very hard to see it. And I had one of my siblings, I believe, had it. And there was times where she was the only person in the world I could go to. She was the person who understood me the most. And then I would get a call saying, "You're just like mom. You're evil, just like I'm like, Where did my friend go? Where did my friend go?" It was
Oh,
so
uh,
crazy making. And then you get
mhm.
into defensive mode, because you're like, no, 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 I'm not, but in her
That's right.
mind, that's exactly how it was. So it's very confusing. Anyway, our time is up, but I wanted to know if there's anything that any message that you feel is important to sort of leave my listeners with as far as
Well,
healing from this.
it is, yes, especially the people who are affected by narcissistic people or borderline people. They really need to develop their self-love and self-valuing. And if they cannot, admit or accept that they had um, narcissistic parents or borderline parents, at least they could do is to try to raise their self-esteem and learn to love themselves and create a happy and worthwhile life, because happiness and valuable life cannot be just shower upon you. You
Right.
have to actively create one for yourself, and don't wait until, some people to show up and shower with the love and gifts and, admiration, because unless you develop your own self-valuing, none of those admirations and gifts and uh, praises will not affect you,
It's true. And it also makes you
right?
vulnerable to predators.
That's
If
right.
you're requiring that, then
Mhm.
chances are you're going to be preyed upon. So that's a
That's right.
really great way to end it. I thank you so much. It's really been great to talk to you.
Thank you
And
very much.
yeah, yeah.
Love to speak with you.
So for anybody that's listening who wants to know more about Dr. Michiyo Ambrosius, you can go to her website and um, look at all the things that she does, and the Neuro Bi-Lateral Processing and the meditations, which I think that the sleep meditations are so valuable, because I know people complain about that all the time to me. So we're going to take a look at that and share that with other people. And thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you very much. You too. And
You take
wonderful,
care.
happy holiday time.
Yeah, same to you. Okay. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.